If you find me spending $25 on a smoothie, you have the right to kick me in the nuts. Oh, ho, ho. The rev of the engine. We're back in 2025 with the Horsepower Rodeo podcast. And this year, we've got guests. We've got AMA Badass, well, MotoAmerica AMA, whatever you want to call it. Andrew Gawer, welcome. One of
Thanks.
the first people I think that ever followed me on TikTok, maybe. Like, we're going way back now.
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty active on TikTok, and I saw your channel pop up, and then I was just like, wow, there's another American that likes motorcycle racing, so I just followed right away.
It's few and far between. It's sad to say. It's few and far between with the motorcycle folks. We're trying to change that, maybe with Liberty Media coming into MotoGP
Right.
and Moto America growing, year by year. We can get this going. But thank you for joining me. Before we get started, I need to do a special shout out to Bison Track. You can find them at every Moto America event in the paddock and bisontrack.com. And if you stay to the end of this podcast, I'm gonna tell you how to save 10% on their website. And my friends at ActiveDim.com, they make a pretty decent set of sunglasses that adjust the light. Those like weird sunglasses that if you go outside they get a little darker. Super cool. Check them out at ActiveDim.com. They're friends of the show. But I just want to jump right in with you and I mean, the obvious question I think a lot of people ask racers and motorcycle riders is when did you get started on a bike? Like, how old were you when you first threw your leg over a motorcycle?
That's a complex, not that complex, but a little weird for me. So I started on bicycles when I was 3, which really helped me a lot, and I did get to go on some small motorcycles a little bit when I was like 6, but sadly, I was of that generation where, moms really didn't want you doing dangerous stuff like motorcycle riding, even though my dad was all about it. So I ended up playing baseball for like 10 years instead.
Yeah.
And I got back into riding um pretty seriously when I was like 19, 20.
And
um
was that street or dirt when you got back on the bike?
Oh, on the street, I had a Ninja 300 actually.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I got licensed, and I didn't waste any time. I went and picked up a Ninja 250, the whole set, race ready, tire warmer stands, everything, for like 2,600 bucks. It was so cheap, and I just went racing.
No, so you went racing on that bike.
Yeah, yeah, which I think really did help me a lot. Even at the time, the 250 was kind of an older class, but starting on, a low horsepower bike really does help you move up, I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because, there's a lot of debate on the talking heads online, the
Oh
motorcycle
yeah.
creators that like to
Oh
talk
man.
about, oh, don't waste your time on a small bike. You'll outgrow it. You're going to be wanting 1,000 so fast. Like, what do you think about this?
Yeah. That's a hot debate. I hear that a lot. Yeah, I teach a lot of people how to ride. Just in the general public, you probably know the CMSB program here in California. So I teach like maybe one class a month of that. And I'll say a lot of people struggle even just to ride like a little 250 or 150. So I think in general, it is true. You should start with a bike that's not super heavy, not super powerful. But there are outliers. There's guys that start in like a 600 or even 1,000, and somehow they do okay. But I think that's more luck and just a little bit of natural skill. I think for like 95% of people, they really need to start with a smaller bike. And just because, those bikes are a lot less, or I should say, they're more forgiving of making mistakes.
Hmm.
Where when you're on like a leader bike, there's just so much power and really powerful brakes. So even, smaller incorrect inputs are just gonna make you crash. So
That's what I've said too, is like,
um,
do you want to make a mistake when you know nothing? I mean, I hopefully if you're jumping on a motorcycle for the first time, you kind of can admit to yourself you don't know much. And I think that's the problem for people is they don't like to admit,
yeah,
"Oh, I don't know anything."
that's
So like,
it's Is I think it's the American spirit, ego. Especially,
For
I know
sure.
you're a SoCal guy. I live up in NorCal, but I ride a lot in SoCal, like especially down at like Apex, and my teammates
Hmm.
in Granada Hills, and especially in like LA, there's that whole, I don't know, like subculture, and it's all about having like a blacked out S1000 RR and doing
Yeah.
wheelies. Like that's how you're a cool guy there. So I get why guys don't want to have like a Ninja 300, but
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I get it too. Like, why not? Everyone wants to go fast. Everyone wants to like,
right,
what was the joke years ago? It's like everyone wants to be a street Rossi, put their knee down and be a badass. But like, maybe you should learn to ride first. Like, maybe you're learning like a skill or two, and then move
right.
on to a bike that you can
It,
actually use that.
yeah, yeah. It's just for like most people that's just gonna be better. I actually had a guy crash right in front of me on the street a few weeks ago, on like a GS6R 1000 or 750. The guy just slammed into a row of cars because he
Yeah,
just didn't know how to use the brakes. So it's
it's the
I
handle
mean,
on
in
the
a in
handle
a
on the
in a
right,
dark,
folks.
yeah, in a dark way, it's funny, but it is kind of sad. That just kind of tells me that we just don't have good rider education in America. So,
We probably don't have good street education in America because the drivers aren't doing any better than the
right.
motorcycle riders.
You're
I
right.
hadn't been on the bike in 3 weeks. I've been out of town. I hadn't been on the bike at all. I went out. It took me 10 minutes for someone to take a left in front of me at a green light. I had the right of way. Had to swerve around them. Like 10 minutes on the road in Southern California before someone
Oh,
actively tried to kill me. So
well,
it's
you're
not
you're
just the motorcycle riders.
you're living in the real life GTA server, so
Oh yeah, no
help
kidding.
you.
So that was one of my questions. A lot of track guys, a lot of race guys don't ride on the street anymore. I mean, I can't tell you how many guys I talk to that, are like, no, no, street riding, that's insane. I ride on the track. That's where I like to ride. But you're from both camps, it feels like.
Um, I'd say I'm like 95% on the track. I do have technically I have two street legal bikes. I have a Zuma 50, a little two-stroke scooter, but that is street legal. It's just for the pits though. I do have a Kawasaki Concourse 14. Sadly though, it sits most of the year. I think I probably only rode it a few times last year. Um, but to teach the CMSP class, technically you have to own a street legal bike, so that's part of why I've kept it. But
Hmm.
I kind of agree with most of those guys. Um, I really like riding like motocross, mini bike, road race, whatever. But on the street, it's it's I think it's more about the chaos of riding here in California than anything. Just like the traffic's so bad, some of the roads are so bad. It's like your front tires falling into the potholes. So I can see why a lot of guys don't want to ride just because the risk is there. Even if you're a great rider, you can just have a guy that doesn't stop and just plows into you or something. So,
Yeah, you can't account for
um,
everything on the street. Like it's just not a
um,
controlled environment, especially in a big
yeah.
city.
But there's also guys like Corey Call, just like super fast, crazy talented, AMA pros, and he loves riding his GS 1200 or 1250, whatever he's got around.
Hmm.
So, there's still some fun, have your girlfriend on the back of the bike or whatever and ride to the beach. Like that can be fun, but it is dangerous and really hectic nowadays. So I kind of get it from both sides.
Which is even more reason where people should know what they're doing on the bike before they're
Right.
jumping on 1,000 and lane splitting at 80 miles an hour. Maybe just
Right. I do think it is a big shock when I have a riding student and they ask, where I ride or what bike I ride, and I tell them, well, I really like to ride more on track. I feel the street's really dangerous. And then I usually get a weird reaction because they're thinking, wow, this guy's like a professional teaching me how to ride and he thinks it's too dangerous.
yeah, and that's the
So,
thing that kind of shocked me hanging out in the paddock too, talking to these guys of like, wait a minute, you guys are hitting insane speeds, putting the knee, sometimes elbow down, and they're like, wow, the street, that's crazy. You're the nuts one. I kind of was in the
Yeah.
same boat as you though when you mentioned the parents and the generation of your moms not wanting you to ride motorcycles. I think that's every generation. I grew up with that. My dad was all for motorcycles, and my mom was like, "No way."
Yeah.
I remember being 6 years old watching a buddy ride his mini bike around the front yard, just like jaw dropped. Oh, I want that. And my mom looked at me and was like, "Don't even think about it."
Yeah. Pretty
Um,
much the same way it went. Yeah, my dad's always ridden. He's had a bike pretty much the whole time I've been alive. But yeah, those Gen X moms, they just were so worried, I guess.
yeah, yeah, they did not like the motorcycles. Even what to the this day when I bought my most recent motorcycle like 5 years ago, my mom was like, you can't have a motorcycle. I'm like, I am 35 years old. I am going to buy a motorcycle.
I still get a random text from my mom, like saying to be safe or whatever. She just doesn't get it. But, I try to explain, oh, I have an airbag and I'm on a closed course and there's no cars that can hit me. But yeah, I guess that's just how moms are.
It just looks dangerous is the problem. It looks dangerous when you're watching from the sidelines on a race
And I mean,
weekend.
it is dangerous. Like, definitely, there's no way around it. You can still get hurt or killed. It's just, at least it's controlled.
Yeah, 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 a little bit better. So that's my next question with you is how did you actually transition from a guy who's like, all right, I'm gonna buy a motorcycle, I'm gonna get out and ride, and then just decide to go racing right away? Take me through for people who maybe want to follow that path, who want to like, hey, I ride, I'd like to get into racing. How did that kind of come about for you?
Well, I kind of had the perfect storm. I was working at Twitter at the time, so I had a pretty good income. I had some money saved up from being on deployment in the military, so I had the money. That's one thing you need. Um, I grew up always wanting to ride. I watched a lot of racing. My dad was more into stuff like NASCAR or a little bit like IndyCar F1, but I was always watching racing. I watched AMA on the Speed Channel way, way back in the day, like late
All
'90s,
right.
early 2000s. So I was always about it. I just didn't really have the opportunity. And my parents aren't rich or anything by any means. And for most people getting into pro motorsports, they usually tend to come from pretty well off backgrounds. But
Right, you need
I
the
didn't. I didn't.
financial support just to afford the
Right.
tires.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't really have that. I just hooked up with a local track day org I saw advertised at a cycle gear bike night of all places, and I did a couple track days, and I was super hooked into it. I got a little bit lucky. I found a suspension guy. Shout out to Jason Hans, JPH Suspension. Really early on, for my very first track day, he started helping me out. He's still been helping me for like 10 years now, which is crazy. Crazy to even say that. And yeah, so I was just hooked right away. I got in. I think what helped me a lot was getting good mentors, good mentorship. Definitely, I kind of connected with guys at the track and in that community, and that's why I ended up getting that Ninja 250. A guy local sent it to me, and he's like, this is he used to race AFM, and he was like, that this is gonna be perfect for you. So I just went and got it, signed up, got some gear, started applying for some little sponsorships, get your 50% off deal or whatever.
Hmm.
And then just never really looked back from there. Just kept riding more, racing more, getting more experience, getting better sponsorships, just trying to, work my way up.
That's the kind of common theme I think when I talk to people who, got into motorcycle racing, going from track days to maybe club racing and then into something like MotoAmerica or something else, is the people you meet when you just go out to the track, just physically being out there, being on track, being at a track day. Like, if you can ride, the people seem to come out of the woodwork and go, "Hey, are you interested in racing? Are you like, what's your deal?" Is that kind of, that sounds like what that your experience is as well.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say so. A lot of people are really helpful in the track day world, I think. Um, with road racing, there are some kind of like weird personalities and egos you're gonna find. Especially if you compare it to like maybe something like dirt riding or motocross. I think people are a little bit more grounded, but um, but there's definitely a lot of people I think that will help you if you're out there seeking it. And I think it was just a little bit lucky on my part. I was a really young guy, and I don't know. I guess people liked what they saw. I try to be nice to everyone. Have a good personality and make jokes and everything, and it just kind of all worked out. And you really can network, meet great people. I've made lifelong friends from the track, and it's really changed my life.
That's awesome. I've a mentor of mine gave me advice long, long ago, and it kind of just seems to transcend. I'm a TV writer. It seems to transcend all occupations, which is be very apparent about what you want. Like, just tell people, hey, I want to do this. I want to be a writer. I want to be a motorcycle racer. Um, and you're going to find people that want to help you do that. And so if they don't know what your goals and ambitions are, it's really hard for anyone to help you out. But the second you show up at a racetrack and go, hey, I think I want to go racing. I think I'm pretty good at this. Hey, and you start letting people know your ambitions, it feels like that you will find the right people to help you. Like the egomaniacs and like haters, like they're going to exist. Like the
Oh, totally.
interesting personalities are going to try to keep you down. But there's really more,
Yeah.
in my experience, a majority of people who want to look out for you and not be a dick.
No, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, I've definitely had and have my fair share of haters, but that just comes with the territory. You got to have that mindset. Advocate for yourself, ignore all the negative people, seek out the people that are going to help you, and yeah, that would just really help you out. Like, if any guy comes up to me, tells me he's interested going to the track, I definitely would want to help him out, get him in the sport. And I think a lot of people have that mentality. So you just gotta seek out the right people.
For sure. So what's your racing plans this year? What are you doing? How many races are you doing? What class are you racing in? Are you doing more of the same? Are you making a move? What are you doing? What's the story?
Man, let's see. I've got a lot of ideas brewing right now. Um, so far it looks like one thing that I think I'd like to do this year I kind of haven't done in a while is get back into some supermoto. I
Oh,
know
fun.
there's some series they're trying to kick off between Nevada, California, and I haven't raced supermoto in a few years, and that's always really fun. Um, Definitely going to be a full road racing season. I'm looking at probably the full AFM calendar. Um, I believe in March, CRA's racing in Las Vegas, and I've actually never raced at a Las Vegas Speedway. I don't know how good it is as a motorcycle track versus like NASCAR or something, but
Hmm.
it'd be cool to try it out. Um, we're definitely looking forward to Laguna Seca, of course, in July.
Absolutely.
Um, and then if we'll just have to see how the year plays. It would be cool to go back out to Circuit of the Americas in Texas. Um, the what kind of sucks is so my teammate Chris Maroney and he rides in twins, and there's no twins this year at Austin. So two
Okay.
years ago there wasn't any. This year he didn't ride, but there was twins, I guess. And then next year when he wants to go, there's no twins. So
He's
Moto
the
America
curse.
is
It's his fault.
yeah, it's definitely his fault. Luckily in Supersport they're at every single round, but Moto America has been doing some kind of, I guess, interesting scheduling choices, where some classes are or aren't at certain rounds. So we're just
Now,
gonna
is
have to
that
figure that out.
do you think that's partly try to keep the cost down on some of these teams to, not have to have them travel to as many circuits so that more teams can actually participate in the season? Is that you think
Y-
that's the thought behind it?
Yeah, it's definitely got to be some sort of cost saving measure. That and just the space they have in the paddock, because they have added quite a few classes. And I know that's kind of an issue at Laguna where they're I don't know. Some years it's fine. I want to say it was not this year, but the year before, they were just like really packing it out. They have a lot of just a lot of bikes and teams, so they are physically limited on what they can bring in as well.
Yeah, I felt like
Um,
this last season when I was walking around Laguna for the MotoAmerica weekend, it was a little more chilled than the year before. I don't know if it was hooligans riding and twins and Junior Cup and because I don't think the twins ran at Laguna Seca this last year. So I think a couple of the twins riders I was talking to were like, "Oh yeah, we're not riding that track." It felt insane the year before, like how busy the paddock was.
right. Yeah, I
Um,
think it's because they took out twins, and I don't think they had the Royal Enfield class either.
that's
So,
the one. Yeah, that's the one.
so with those two gone, I think that, and twins is a pretty popular class. It's a little bit more accessible. Um, but yeah, even with the smaller grids, it's still packed. I know back in the day, like 80s, 90s, early 2000s, they usually had, I think, 44 rider grids, and I think we're capping out closer to like 36 now.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's big when it's full.
Yeah.
Uh, but between Laguna Seca, I've had this debate with a couple of riders. Between Laguna Seca and Coda, what's the better track?
Oh man, that's yeah, that's another tough question, man. We really have to pick one.
Yeah, right.
I'm
Well,
gonna.
what? Yeah, I don't want to help you out either because I know the consensus among a lot of people is different than I thought it was.
Man, that's tough. I'm gonna go with Laguna. Um,
That's what the writers say. Almost all of
yeah,
them think they
I'm
do
gonna
that
go with
exactly what you just
Laguna.
did.
That's a tough one. Dakota was amazing. I'm gonna say, I to practice before I got there. Um, I did a little bit of like a simulator driving at Coda and like an F1 car, and that was pretty cool. But like getting out on the actual track was pretty surreal. Like that is a real, no joke, world level track, and it's a difficult physical track too. It's got long straights, it's got the S's, it's got some double apex turns and interesting sections. So it's kind of got it all. Elevation change, and it's just a really long track. I think it's got like 20 turns, something like that.
Yeah, 20 turns and that
Yeah,
back straight
yeah,
is
yeah. I
forever.
remember crashed down 19. Yep.
Ah,
Yeah, that was my 15 seconds of fame. Not really the way you want it, but oh well. That would have been a really good lap too if I hadn't crashed. um,
I mean,
uh,
on a smaller bike, like, I mean, not so much on a super sport or a super bike, but on a smaller bike, that back straight has to feel like an eternity.
yeah, I can't imagine because even on the 600, it's pretty long straight away, especially compared to yeah, even compared to like Thunder Hill, like that's a long straight. Um, so I can't imagine being on like a Ninja 300. Just
Just tucked down.
um,
I was there a couple years ago for MotoGP weekend, and the Moto 3 race got like red flagged like twice. But just watching those little bikes coming down the straightaway in a pack, and it's, they all tuck in behind each other, and then by the time they arrive, as it's like turn 12 or whatever, it's like 15 bikes arriving at that corner at the same time.
yeah,
It was just mayhem with those little bikes.
yeah, that's why I really think Moto 3's got the best racing right now. They're also competitive and close, and it's all about being in the draft, getting like the double, triple, quad draft, slingshot maneuver. It's crazy.
Oh,
I
it's by
remember when
far.
I raced. I remember when I raced Junior Cup. Uh, you don't know what you don't know, and we ended up having to re-gear the bike because once I was like out and qualifying in the races and getting like double and even triple drafts, the bike was going so much faster with the triple draft that I needed a little bit more space in sixth gear. I was actually running into redline where when you're just pushing your own air by yourself, the bike just can't go as fast. So that was kind of crazy.
So talk about that a little bit because I think a lot of people at home don't understand, you know, you're doing lap after lap, practice and qualifying, you're doing these laps mostly on your own. You know your braking markers. You get in a race and you get a triple slipstream. How does that change entering a slow corner at the end of a straight like coda? Like, what are you looking at to go, okay, how much sooner do you have to brake because you are going quite a bit faster than you would be on your own?
Well, I think some of it's just down to feel. But well, let's say you're going to try and do a block pass. You are going to a little bit, you get a little bit more speed, and then you can, I guess, theoretically try to get past the guy in the entrance, and then maybe you're just going to, brake harder and carry it more through the turn. So that might ultimately make your exit a little bit worse, but you get the pass done. And that's sometimes why you'll see, like two guys really battling, and then you'll see the guy in third come by and pass both of them because they're kind of messing up their own pace and lines trying to, I guess attack the corner or whatever you want to call
Hmm.
it. And then the other guy just goes by, takes the, the normal path, and he's gone. So it's really situationally dependent. I guess it depends on the bike you're on and your brakes and everything. Um, but that's really coming down to racecraft at that point. And I don't know, there's probably a whole psychology to it as well. Sometimes some of these guys, they really know the people they're racing with, and they even know how this guy's going to react because everyone's got a little bit of their own style. Some guys are more aggressive than others, especially these guys with dirt backgrounds. They'll just try to to take you out. you know, the really old school guys are like bumping your elbow and hitting you.
And I was talking about that a couple of weeks ago about how it, at least it feels in the last handful of years, especially at the top level of the sport, passing has really become a contact sport in all levels of motorcycle racing. Like you see it in MotoAmerica in the superbike class. We had, was it Bobby Funk punted Josh Herron off the track, I think in the first race of last season. I mean, punted. I was like, whoa, like elbows out.
Well,
Um,
good
and
for
and
Bobby.
and the GP guys are doing it to each other, and the Moto 3 guys for sure are bumping each other. So, have you noticed any change since you started as far as like how, whether it through spectating and watching or through your own racing, does it feel like more of a contact sport, or does it feel like a little more gentlemanly?
Well, I wouldn't call it a contact sport. I think if you're a little too dirty, you're gonna get penalized, or you're gonna get in trouble. There's kind of this fine line you gotta walk of not being dirty, but still being really aggressive. And that's kind of what I like about motorcycle racing, because if you watch something like Formula One, it's like they're almost scared to pass each other because they just have so many passing rules, and they whine and cry. And you'll get guys from like my dad's generation that say that's why they don't watch F1 because it's just a bunch of crybabies. um,
Well, they nudge each other, and they're like, a little tire rub, and they're into the gravel. It's like you have to be so
right,
much more careful there. And it
right.
does feel like every time there's a pass, there's a crash in Formula One.
But to answer your question, I kind of think it's the same. It's always been. Maybe there's just been a few more specific incidents. Um, Bobby's from out here in Stockton, and I know he grew up dirt track racing, like flat track. So he's got that really aggressive history in him. So it doesn't surprise me. Um,
It was a great move, and I didn't expect to see it from him, mixing it up at the front like he did in the first half of last year, especially the first half of last year, and kind of like hung around all year long. But it just felt like he was riding with an aggression that at least I hadn't seen. I'm a little newer to Moto America. I'm more, just paid much more attention to MotoGP, so I didn't know the guys and the faces as much. But just from the last few years, I was like, oh shit, he's coming to play this year. Like,
yeah, yeah. I've been lucky to hang out with Bobby a few times. He's a really good rider. He's really serious, and everything, his training, his diet, his mindset. So yeah, it's good to see him doing so well. I think he used to have a Suzuki factory ride, but sadly that went away. So it's good that he's able to make his way back.
yeah, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see him with the big boys at Yamaha and mixing it up at the with that team. It'd be interesting to see what they can do this year. All right, so before we jump into the next kind of level of questions I have for you. I thought I'd give you a chance because you talked about all the people that helped you, to give you a chance to kind of say some thank yous and shout outs to sponsors and stuff on the off chance that they're watching and you'll get a little brownie points.
Oh, sure, totally. Well, of course, like I said, Jason Hahn, JPH just mentioned, always got to give him a big shout out. Wonder CBD, Matt Racing, they're a newer sponsor for me. This French suit company. Check them out. They're an official partner in Motion and Helite. Really good suits. Um, Galfer USA brakes, Vortex Racing Woodcraft, Spy for your glasses, goggles. Um, go give those guys a look.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, like the sport's like one of those that's really hard to do without help. Like you said
Oh,
before, like you either need to be massively wealthy or you need a lot of help along the way. So I always want to give people a chance to shout out to the folks that make the wheels turn, literally.
oh,
Um,
totally. Oh, and of course, I can't forget, especially if you're here in California, you have a crash, you're affected by the fires, call Sean Gershon Law. That's it's an attorney we partner with, and yeah, so he can definitely take care of you.
can he sue the people who are gouging for rent?
You'll have to ask him. Though lots too complex. I deal with that a little bit in my own career, but yeah, you can sue anyone you want for anything. It's
It's
just
true.
whether or not you'll win.
That's true. That's true. It's America. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, you mentioned it a little bit about when you're talking about passing, but like riding style, whether you're aggressive or whatever. And when you watch a Moto America or MotoGP weekend, they always talk about riding style. And there's a lot of talk about, does the style suit a bike and does the bike suit a style? And then this rider adapt? Um, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what you feel your riding style is. And then also, do you think people make too much of it?
So to answer your second question, maybe a little bit. Um, it's like everyone does have a little bit of a style, but ultimately you're braking to slow down, you're turning the bike, and then you're accelerating. So I guess it's like so complex but simple at the same time. As far as my style, I think I'm I guess pretty balanced. Kind of usually people talk about being either like a front wheel or like a rear wheel type of guy. Um, I didn't have as much of the dirt background, although now I ride a lot more dirt, as kind of the some of the older guys. Um, I've always relied more on that like front tire grip, tires in line, and that seems to work pretty well with the newer bikes. And just the way the sport is now with traction control and everything, usually don't see guys like as much spinning the tire up and just sliding around like crazy. I think that ends up wearing your tire out a little bit quicker, and with like how powerful the new bikes are, they're just maybe not accelerating as well as I could. So it, I really think the style comes down to more just like riding the bike the way it needs to be ridden. Like, like if you're riding a MotoGP bike, that's got to be written a certain way where, a 450 Supermoto, you're going to see guys sliding around like crazy just because of all those, tight turns and speeding up, slowing down, and how light the bike is. It's just, the way the chassis is set up and the tires. So I think the way the rider's background definitely is going to affect how they ride the bike. And, there could be subtle differences. Like, I was riding with Tyler O'Hara a couple months ago, and he seems to really like using the rear brake, especially on his bagger bike. But other guys are just barely using the rear brake or not even using it at all, but they still achieve similar lap times. Maybe they're compensating with the way the engine braking is set up on the bike. So there are like different styles and like ways to accomplish it, but
Yeah, it feels like
I'm sure that people kind of overemphasize it. But they need something to talk about. It's just like NFL announcers. They're always saying the same stuff, but they need to say
absolutely,
something.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean they have to fill a lot of airtime, and it feels like there's only so many. Like you say, the simplest form, it's slow down, turn, speed up, and you got to figure out how to to engage that over and over and over again. So I get it too. It's just I always find it very fascinating. They just love to talk about riding style and oh, this dramatic shift when a rider goes from one bike to another, especially at the top level. It seems like you do have some riders where you go from a Yamaha to a KTM and your career disappears because it just you don't gel with that bike or whatever it is. It's interesting to hear you talk about it too of the electronics because it does feel like you see a lot less rear sliding than we did like in the 80s and 90s because those electronics are so good. Like you can just hammer
Yeah.
on the gas and the electronics are going to cut in and give you an assist. Do you think it would be more exciting? Like you talk about British Superbike, no electronics, those bikes are just
Oh yeah.
it's right wrist and go.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I've actually been able to race against one of those guys. Yeah, they're maniacs.
yeah, and it's like I wonder like, you know, uniformity in the sport feels hard because every country does their own thing. Every country does, you know, their own program. Um, do you like the electronics or do you want to go to the Wild West? Like if you could just go, I just want to race to have fun. Like does the electronics make the experience of racing more fun, or does the unpredictability of having a bike that it's all in your wrist?
Man, all your questions are so tough.
Ah,
um, I think overall, I do like the electronics. Um, I mean, I'm a little bit nerdy myself, so I do like appreciate the technology of that. Um, and it is cool like seeing how we have all these technologies like auto blip and quick shifting and adjustable on the fly like 10 levels of traction control and three different engine braking maps. My ZX6R that I race is pretty bare bones. I actually have the traction control turned off. I do have like an auto tune system on it and a quick shifter, but that's about it really. I do have launch control as well.
okay.
um but my bike's not that crazy fancy as it could be. Some of the top super sport teams you're gonna see like just crazy bikes, and they're gonna have the Nintendo buttons with all these different settings. uh you know and that's kind of the downside, I guess. The people would argue against it because it does make the sport very expensive, which I think is kind of hurting us right now because when the rules allow these certain technologies and they're out there, um for a lot of people, the reason they don't have it is because maybe they don't have like the $10,000 or whatever it is to drop that in, and then once you have it, you need someone that knows how to control it. So
That's the
for a
thing no one
privateer.
talks about. That's the
Yeah.
thing no one talks about is the
Yeah.
human being that has to come along with the
Right.
technology to make it make sense.
Right. So if you're like just a privateer like me, you either need to be really resourceful and smart and, I don't know, read the book that's in Italian and pray. Um, or you got to just be lucky and have the right people that know about that will help you. Or what most people do is they're paying someone, to help them set it up, like an actual engineer. So when you take the cost of buying the system and then you need someone to install it, that's going to cost money too. And then you need it to be like maintained and adjusted. That's a lot of money. So the downside there is that I think it does make the sport less accessible, and we are kind of seeing that happen a little bit right now at the club racing level. I do feel like anytime the economy is not doing so great, we're going to see that kind of start to fall away. But yeah, so it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It is pushing the sport forward and giving us all these cool technologies, but it does make things a lot more expensive. And And it's not just buying it too, right? What if you go out and you just have a huge crash? Like even that small low side I had at Coda, well, small. I think that crash must have been well over $1,000 in damage. It bent my front wheel, my forks, my triple, and the swing arm.
Right.
So yeah, if you put in like labor and parts for that, that's a couple grand. Oh, and my lap timer, and it dented the gas tank. So don't forget the $800 lap timer. um. So yeah. So now imagine you had that crash, but it's even bigger. The bike flipped a few times, and your data system got smashed, and now you need not only to fix everything else on the bike, but now you need another few grand to replace all those cables that got ripped out and computers and processing units, GPS. It's it's pretty in depth on like this. And God help you, the super bikes. I
Well,
I don't.
that's in a whole nother category, right? Like as far as the
Right,
complexity of those bikes.
right.
But
So it
it's
can get
interesting you
crazy.
mention like the club racing thing because it does feel like all this technology that is in super bikes and these super sport machines that are more advanced then trickles down to these street machines, and people are showing up to just a track day and they've got these insane motorcycles, and then you get into club racing and you're like, wait, do I have to have an insane bike to even have fun doing this now? And it does change the game for
So
everyone who just wants to like be maybe just a casual fun. Oh, it's like, instead of bowling, I want to go racing. Um,
right,
but
yeah.
get
I think I'm seeing that. Sorry, not to cut you off, but
No,
I
go
do
ahead.
think I'm seeing that in club racing where maybe there's a little bit more disparity from a little bit of the more serious guys and the people that are kind of just there to have fun, or maybe they're more serious but they just don't have a lot of money. um you know, like as much as it does come down to the rider, ultimately having good equipment, a good team is also really important. So if you have an old clapped out bike, it is going to be hard to compete with guys that are running race gas every session, brand new tires every session. They've got, crazy built motors making 30 more horsepower than you, and they've got all the wheelie control and traction control and slide control and everything on their bike that you don't have. It is going to make it tougher to compete for sure. So, um,
Is that
it,
part of what maybe makes something like Supermoto a little more appealing? Is that those
oh,
bikes are a
totally.
little more simple? Those bikes, there's not as much you're going to do with them, and you're showing up on a
Yeah.
little bit even playing field, and the cost is way down, I would assume.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, especially since it's more at like kart tracks. That's why I think there is, stuff like motocross, supercross, and supermoto and flat track is just it's more grassroots, and we haven't. There is a lot of technology in those bikes too, but it's just not at like the degree that you see in like super sport and superbike and that type of racing. So I think that does keep things a little bit more competitive, which usually seems to lead to better racing, like what you see in Moto 3. Everyone's on basically the same bike and very close. So, but I think that's like an age-old discussion that's probably been thrown around for like decades and decades and decades.
For sure. Well, that's a perfect segue into I wanted to talk a little bit about the pinnacle of the sport because I think in America we don't get a lot of coverage of MotoGP and the biggest, the best of the best. So, you a GP fan? Or obviously, we're already talking about Moto 3. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I don't follow it where I'm watching every single race, like all the way start to finish. So, I kind of like come in and out of it. There'll be some really good races I'll watch, but I do have the pass for MotoGP and World Superbike, so I can watch them. And the MotoGP races, at least, are actually still broadcast on NBC here, so we can watch them on TV. That's cool. Um, yeah, it's since Rossi got out of it, I feel like MotoGP is losing some of the star power it
Hmm.
had. And other than Marquez, we're not really seeing kind of the superstar, like huge personality guys taking over. So it's been harder to follow when it's just just these Italian guys you don't know.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
I,
think there's a shadow cast that
yeah,
is just massive, it's and they are going to have to find an identity after that. And I think that's
right,
hard.
right. Because if you go into like Cycle Gear or a dealership or I don't know, rider hangout, whatever, most of the people are gonna know what you're talking about when you say Rossi. So they did a good job, kind of like getting into the American culture. But if you say, "Oh, what about Bezecchi?"
Right.
You're no one's gonna know what you're talking about. So I think it's hard when there's no American in the sport. It's just European guys. I think it is harder to keep Americans kind of engaged in it.
I think
Um,
that's one of the things that the this last season in MotoGP was the biggest missed opportunity was the fact that I think our two biggest kind of personalities in MotoGP probably are like Bezzecchi and Fabio Di Giannantonio. Like if you've ever seen these guys, like they're big personalities, but neither of them was riding at the front. And like you need
right,
Rossi, but Rossi like next generation Rossi can't be finishing eighth every week. Like that's not going to change
right.
the culture around motorcycle racing if, Bezzecchi has a horrible year like he did last year. And, I'm not expecting a ton of him on an Aprilia, but we need those guys with personality also being at the front. And I think Pedro Acosta has a possibility of being that guy because I mean he came in week one and was like, you know what the problem with MotoGP is? All these dudes are boring.
Yeah,
Like oh, corporate answers, like Honda corporate answers. Knock that shit off.
yeah,
Let's be entertaining.
yeah. The sport is very corporate now, and I think that's a huge detriment. Um, I mean, I've definitely gotten in trouble quite a few times for being maybe a little too openly edgy or even political or something like that. Um, but I think that's really what the sport needs. Like people need to be entertained, and especially with younger generation, like people my age and even younger. I think they really value authenticity a lot more than just being like very corporate or politically correct. I think people get very bored of that, and honestly, actions speak louder than words. And when you see stuff like TV shows like the Kardashians or some of like the top watched content, obviously that's what people like. So and even in like Supercross, which is still pretty popular in the U.S. A lot of those guys still are pretty corporate, but you'll see them trash talking occasionally and, even fighting. And, we see, there's always memes about Vince Freezy because he's just like such a dirty rider taking people out. I don't know if you follow Supercross at all.
I don't as much, no.
Oh, oh, but, guys like, he's got a reputation just for like fighting with people and kind of being dirty. So they kind of have those big personalities still, and they're a little bit less filtered. I actually made a post about what just blew my mind was Hayden Deegan, who is like one of the top riders right now, son of Brian Deegan. Um, and he's he's just out there reposting, Trump videos and just all this stuff. He doesn't care, and he's got the big sponsors and he's, a top five international rider. And people just love him. He's got like millions of followers on Instagram and TikTok. I think he's only like 19. So yeah, I think people really value that.
It's
And it's just a lot of the
it's
riders are very corporate and it's boring. I mean, just to be blunt, people don't want to just see the bike go around in circles and then you say, thanks to my sponsors, have a good day. Like there's got to be more to it than that.
Yeah, I feel like media coaching, like I understand it from a corporate perspective of people get on the podium and go right
Right.
to they hold the helmet correctly and they say what they're supposed to say for the sponsors and like I get it, those are the people that are paying the bills, like I totally get it.
Right.
But, it doesn't make me want to buy any of those products. Like I think that's the dirty secret. Like I much rather cheer for the personalities. And that's one of the things I think in the sport from top to
Right.
bottom needs a lot of work is how can you serve the corporate masters but also not turn into a drone? Because no one wants to listen to
Right.
like we don't do podiums in accounting for a reason. Like we're like, ah, John, you're from accounting. You had a great year. Yeah, I'd like to thank my spreadsheets. Like no one gives a shit.
That's funny. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like with most things, I think there's nuance to it. Um, for better or for worse, corporations do rule the country. So, and in racing, you need to have that image. But
But it's
it just
risky too. It's risky as, to you say be yourself. People
oh, it
appreciate
is. Yeah.
authenticity, but it's risky to go out there and go, I'm a Trumper and
Oh, it's a
turn
very
off
fine
turn off
line.
turn
Yeah,
off half your audience, man.
yeah. Well, I try to not be openly like too political. I know, especially before I was doing MotoAmerica when I was club racing, I used to be a real maniac. I would just make memes like all the time, and that did kind of help get me a following, bigger than riders that are actually better riders than me. But I just try to kind of show my personality, my sense of humor, and I think a lot of people they like that, just being relatable. Um,
I think
but
so.
but there is a line, right? You don't want to alienate people, but you can't try to. But if you try to please everyone, I think you also please no one in the end, basically. So better just be yourself, be authentic, but just don't go so far to where you're like really being offensive and turning people off. But especially being in California and not being a traditional Californian. Let's just say, definitely there are people that don't like me for that, for being like very open, and I kind of just try to just be factual, say it how it is, and some people just can't handle that.
No, it's true. I mean, I think one of the things too is like everyone I wish we could get back to a culture of having fun rather than being controversial, where it felt
Oh,
like
totally.
it feels like we're in a time where the thing that gets clicks is like anger and rage bait rather than just people having fun. And like
Oh,
motorcycles are supposed
totally.
to be fun. And
Yeah.
like dude, just be a goofball. Be a nut. Like you hang out with guys in the paddock or at a track day, like everyone's a freaking nutcase. You wouldn't be riding a fast motorcycle if you weren't a little bit of a nutcase. So let that come
Oh,
out. It's okay.
absolutely. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And some of these guys, uh yeah, especially, yeah, some of these guys, when there's no cameras and they're just by themselves, it can definitely be pretty wild. Um I'm not gonna mention Bobby. um but yeah, yeah, no, just I think it's really the what happened was the culture from like 2010 to like really just a couple years ago. People are just too scared of losing their sponsors, getting like canceled or whatever. I don't know. I've gone through that, and yeah, you're right. Exactly. It's lame. It should just be like fun riding bikes, but that's just with our chronically online society now. It's a weird place to be, because social media has kind of become so important for riders to like be known and have a presence and have sponsors, but at the same time, you kind of need to stand out in a way.
Hmm.
Like you've got guys that are crazy fast, top 20 Moto America riders, and like no one even knows who they are, but then you'll have some like LA street squid canyon master that's got like 50,000 Instagram followers, and all he does is just edit videos and do wheelies,
Yeah.
so you got to
I mean,
be able to get attention,
yeah,
for
it's
better or for
marketing.
worse.
It's marketing when it comes
Yeah.
down to it. Like, what's your brand? What's your take? I can't remember. I think I'm trying to think of who it was. Maybe it was Jack Roach last year who had an on the grid interview before the race, and he was like starting like 10th or 11th, and they're interviewing people on the grid, and they're like, "So, what are you hoping at the start?" And he just looked and goes, "I want to be in the lead." But I mean, it's not very realistic. But like, what
Oh
like what
man.
what do you want me to say? You're like, well, I'm hoping that we start well, and I can give you the
Well,
same answer that everyone else gives.
Jack's really young,
Yeah.
and I don't know how old he was when he did that. He actually raced out here for a little bit. I forgot where he lives, but yeah, Jack's a young guy, and I guess he's just saying what he thought in his mind, and that is kind of like I think an inside joke for like anyone in like racing, let
Right.
alone motorcycle racing. It's like you always see, IndyCar, F1, NASCAR, like any of those like really big top sports, and they're interviewing the guy like, "Oh, what's your strategy for the race?" Well, to go faster than everyone else and win the race. Like, what do you think?
Yeah.
So you just, whatever they just say, whatever.
Yeah.
That's
But it was
funny.
a great
That
for me it was a great moment because I was like it just called out
Yeah,
the question but like in a kind of innocent way. It was like yeah, I would like to be
yeah,
in the lead. That's what I would like for the start. I would like the 10 guys in front of me to all stall their motorcycles
right.
so I can lead into the first corner.
Yeah, and I mean that's not even really, I guess, a great question to even ask, anyways, because that's just such an obvious answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you want for the start of the race? To get in front of everyone else.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
pretty
I
funny.
don't know what else you say.
It made me laugh. I was like that's you need more of that. Say what's on your mind, but don't get in trouble. We all have our
Yeah,
corporate overlords.
yeah. Don't get in trouble like me, guys.
All right, so we're almost to an hour, so the way I want to wrap this up was we're gonna play a little game called Agree to Disagree. I'm gonna pull some cards from this really cheap game I got. It's called 1 Minute Rant. It has some polarizing opinions, and we're also gonna talk about some motorcycle stuff. So I'm gonna read an opinion, and you are going to agree or disagree, and give me a very spirited response to why you agree or disagree. Try to keep it under a minute, but here we go. We've never done this before, so this is going to be,
Okay.
um, and these are stupid, by the way. So here's the
Yeah.
hot take. I hate that one. We'll go on the next one. Okay, the first one. This is perfect for you. PDA is not okay. Agree or disagree?
I'm gonna disagree. You may or may not know my wife's Colombian, and if you go anywhere in Latin America, Mexico, Colombia, El Salvador, whatever, people are pretty affectionate. It's pretty romantic culture, so I think it's okay. I mean, to an extent, there's a limit, but
No limit. No limit. Do what you want. It's America. We're getting back.
right.
Just do it. Do whatever you want. Everyone do what you want. If you want to PDA the hell out of each other, go ahead. Go for it. Um, I think most of us in the entertainment industry are attention seekers, so we want to have attention. We want people looking our way. There's so much look at me energy in Los Angeles, so I
Oh
can't
my
live in
god!
LA
Don't even get
and
me
be against
started.
PDA. Like there's dudes just running down the street with their shirt off trying to get acting gigs. Like this is how it works here. So
Oh man.
you have to have the PDA. You have to
Oh
get
yeah,
out
my
there.
my little brother's trying to get his breakthrough right now too, so I
Oh, there
get
you go.
it.
All right, the motorcycle version of this game. Hot take: it is easier to transition from riding on dirt to street than it is transitioning from street to dirt.
Yeah, 100% agree. I, I
No,
I have a lot of respect for like pro motocross and supercross riders. I think their level of like physicality and physical fitness and strength, along with the mental and technical skill of it, is just insane. Yeah, go watch last year's San Francisco Supercross race where it just rained in the entire time and they're riding through the slop. That's inhuman. So yeah. Good
I,
luck
I
taking a street guy and making him ride in that. He's gonna crash.
I happen to agree with you. I'd love to disagree and make this a crazy debate, but I always say that you look at the MotoGP guys and how they train away from the sport, and it's all motocross, it's all flat track, it's all dirt training, right? And how many of these guys injure themselves doing that? The corporate overlords would not let them train on dirt and get injured in the way they do unless it was really good for their riding.
Yeah.
Like the risk reward of getting injured in a motocross accident versus how much better of a rider you're going to be when you show up day one. It has to be like everyone understands. Listen, the risk of this is worth it because I'm going to be that much better. So for me, like dirt is going to translate to the street or to the track and street so much. And because Otherwise, they wouldn't let these dudes do it. It's just
Right.
simple as that. Like you're not letting Pedro Acosta and Mark Marquez go out on a dirt track if you actually don't think it's helping their riding for you to help them win championships.
100%.
All right, next dumb one. Um, oh, that's weird. That's just I don't want to say those words to you.
Okay.
This game got weird. These are some weird questions. Pluto should be considered a planet. Agree or disagree? Agree or disagree?
It hurts me, but I have to disagree.
What?
I really liked Pluto being a planet, but it's funny you bring this up. A few weeks ago, I was actually reading up on it, and just yeah, sadly, Pluto doesn't meet the definition of a planet with its like atmosphere and all that. So it breaks my heart because I remember being a little kid learning about Pluto, but yeah, now we just know more, and I guess technically it's not a planet, so I'm gonna have to
I, I,
disagree.
I couldn't disagree with you more because remember, I don't know how it was when you were kids, but like how you remembered the planets, and
Yeah,
it was something like my very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas. Well,
yeah, so
without
that's
the
some song like
P,
yeah.
at
It
the
wouldn't
P, without the P, what the hell is she serving? She's serving nothing. Mom's got nothing.
yeah, all those mnemonic devices don't work anymore, so I don't
None
know
of
what the
them.
kids are doing, but
They just have to memorize this shit. It's horrible.
that's what they just don't memorize anything. Just ask ChatGPT.
It's true. That's true.
Sadly.
All right, another motorcycle one. It takes more skill to be an elite heavy breaker than it does to be fast through the corners. Agree or disagree?
Holy cow. I've heard a lot of pretty respected top coaches talk about how much difference it is like being able to break like that, looking at like the top riders versus like even just like Moto America back marker. So yeah, I'm gonna say the heavy brakes. Like there's a lot made up on the brakes, but I mean I guess that kind of transitions into your turning too, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's why it's
Yeah,
like such a fine line, right?
that's a tough question, but I don't think there's any way to deny that being a beast on the brakes is a huge skill.
And especially with how much electronics is in the sport, how much kind of help you have on kind of corner exit, maybe it's a little bit less on corner entry, I would say. Like the technology of braking, it's
Yeah,
better, and you have
it's still
engine
pretty
brake,
analog. Yeah,
but it does feel like the rider can really make up for a lot on the brakes versus sometimes the bikes are pretty even in the corners because of the electronic help. But
absolutely.
you know, everyone has their opinion. I think that's the right take. Last one from the goofy pile. Okay, how do you feel about it? All right, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this one because this personally drives me nuts. Is how do you feel when a grocery store constantly rearranges the aisles and puts stuff in different places?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's annoying. I get why they do it. You know, they want you to walk around more and buy more stuff. But no, that is super annoying.
Nothing makes me want to stab someone in the face more than putting the bread aisle on the other end of the store. I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh man,
Uh,
yeah, that's a tough one.
I hate that so much. I used to like that was my first job in like high school was a grocery store and I worked there and hated it. Like I knew where everything in the store was. And then they rearranged the whole store and now I'm an idiot. I'm like, what? That's not my fault.
You live in LA. Are you an Air One enjoyer or
No.
no? No,
No, absolutely not. That
not even that like smoothie all the girls get.
if you find me spending $25 on a smoothie, you have the right to kick me in the nuts.
Okay, so no on Air One.
No on Air One. I have a long history with Air One because I had a really annoying boss that would make me go there and get her food. And that was one of my early experiences in LA when I first moved here, was going to Air One, and I was like, "What on earth is this? Wait, cabbage is $9? What is going on?" So no, no Air One for me. I barely
Okay,
like Whole Foods.
I'm gonna flip an LA question on you.
Okay, all right, I love it.
Equinox. Equinox, worth it or not worth
Mm, not worth it. Is it nice? If you could give me a free gym membership to anywhere in LA, I will go to Equinox, but I'm not paying for that membership ever. I don't care how much money I make. I could sell a TV show tomorrow and be like rubbing elbows with Ryan Murphy and at the Emmys, and I'm still not paying for Equinox. Sorry.
it? Okay.
But but if you want just a gym to go to, that's pretty freaking nice.
Yeah.
So not worth it, but like, kind of a little bit of FOMO too. All right, last one. We got a writing question here. If you don't like riding in the rain, you're not a real rider. Agree or disagree?
Oh my God. Um, Dang, you're making all the Californians really sweat right now with that one. I can't even remember the last time it rained. Um, if you don't like riding in the rain, you're not a real rider. I'm going to slightly agree. Only in that I think if you are a well-rounded rider, you got to be able to ride in pretty much any situation. But man, there's not a lot of rain racing in California, I'll tell you. I think it's only rained at an actual race day once in like the last like 9 years, 8 years. Like it just never rains during the season here.
Yeah.
So
I mean, well, that's good. Like, I personally hate riding in the rain. I don't like being on I mean, the road and the
yeah.
street and the traffic is bad enough without throwing in rain, but I just don't like being cold and wet. And like, I wouldn't mind having better skills in the rain. I got caught up a Sousa Canyon. I don't know if anyone knows this canyon, but it's not that challenging of a road, but it's a nice canyon ride. I got caught up there in a rainstorm, and I was like, this sucks.
No, it sucks. I think it's one of those things where, yeah, can you do it? And like, should you be able to? Like, life or death, do you need to be able to ride through the rain? Yeah, but I'm I'm in the camp now where if it's raining hard outside, I'm definitely getting in my car and gonna have
Absolutely.
my AC. I've really become a fair weather rider. I mean, I barely ride on the street as it is, but I don't know. I used to be a little bit more gung ho about just riding in any situation. Um, but now that I don't have a normal commute, no. If it's super cold or if it's raining out, I'm getting in my car.
Absolutely. As you should, and any motorcycle riders out there who disagree can stick it. I'm standing with
I
you on this
think
one, buddy.
they're just mad they have to ride their bike. Sorry. Sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
I mean,
Don't be
enjoy
so
your
poor.
enjoy your Aero Stitch, enjoy your heated gear. I'll
Ugh,
be in my Tiguan.
no, no. I went out to the track. Track days had there was their last event of the year was Thanksgiving weekend, Button Willow, and I showed up and the whole place was fogged in and it was so ass cold. And I was like, no one told me it was going to be cold today. Like, why are we riding in the cold? This needs to be canceled right now. There's 200 people out there riding in the freezing cold. I still rode, threw on a layer, but I was like, this is freezing.
Man, Laguna is always like that in the early morning sessions. I think it was a little bit like that this year and like two
Oh
seasons
yeah,
ago. I almost couldn't even see where I was going in the first practice because Junior Cup was the first session up, and there's so much fog and water still that it was just it was misting my visor. So I'm going through the corkscrew just like off muscle memory, can't even see where I am.
I
Yeah, it's
remember
it's not
showing
the
up.
best.
This year was gnarly. I think on Sunday was the worst. Like the
Yeah,
weekend was foggy all day, but Sunday, like I think they postponed the sessions by like an hour and
yeah.
a half
No, they
because it
did.
was so foggy.
I remember
I
now.
and
Yeah,
I'd been up there a few times and never seen it quite like that on a race day. I was like, how I can't see the track. I took a picture from above, I think it's above turn one, and from the bridge you couldn't see turn one. And I
right.
was like, or turn the hairpin. I guess it's turn two technically.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you couldn't even see it. And I was like, how's anybody riding in this today? Um,
Not very well.
Well, thank you, dude, for joining me. It was great to actually meet you face to face and a
Oh,
fellow
totally.
Californian, which is nice. You don't have to do this at 5 in the morning my time. It's amazing.
Oh,
And
totally.
I promised everybody at the beginning that I was going to show you a secret trick how to get 10% off at Bison Track. If you go to bisontrack.com and use my code HP Rodeo 2025, they'll give you 10%. Yeah, so go
Yeah,
ahead and do
shout out
that
to
if you're
Robert
look.
Lackey.
Yeah, looking out for the boots and I mean the gloves and the suits and the hats and the shirts. Go check them out. And yeah, but yeah, I appreciate all your time and your opinions. And good luck with all the riding this year. And I'm sure we'll be keeping up. And let's get you
Oh,
and your teammate
totally.
back on, and then we can have you and your teammate debate grocery store etiquette.
Oh my God. Well, he's a true LA boy, born and raised his whole life in LA, so that'll be great for you.
There, perfect, perfect. Cool, man. Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
thanks so
and
much for having me.
we'll see you all again on the next one.